The matchup is almost here, just 2 short days away. And I don't care what teams you hate around the league. I can promise you that 49er fans, you hate the Seahawks. And Seahawks fans, I know you hate the 49ers. This game is always circled on the calendar, no matter who is playing in it. Brandon and I, however, we are friends. We are friends, but we hate each other's team. That means that we got to be rivals here today. We are going to discuss this matchup, and we're going to do it next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second, and it's behind enemy lines on a different day for a couple reasons. One, the 49ers and Seahawks play on Thursday, so we got to let this show marinate. And two, I've got a hurricane staring me directly in the face in about 24 hours. So we got to get this thing tapped out, on deck, ready to go. Brandon, my man, just so everybody knows in the chat, I don't know if he wants me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. It's Brandon's birthday today. Happy birthday to you, Brandon. How you doing, my man? How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great, and it's as always, it's a birthday-like day for me to get a chance to chop it up with you. I'm glad that we're not going to have to tie you to a tree like I hear some people do out there down the south with hurricanes, and have you just, you literally got the strap and you've got the microphone and hair's blowing and beer's going this way, we don't dodging cars, but getting that analyst in, getting that.
Did you ever see that video where like the guy's trying to put off like there's a major storm and he's like fighting with the wind, and then 2 guys walk by in shorts and a t-shirt like right behind him with nothing going on? So
they've had a few of those moments. There's the moments too where the women's out there and the people are like, one guy's like gliding in the background. People troll, so it's hilarious some of the stuff they come up with.
Oh man, well dude, we've got a heck of a matchup on Thursday, and it's coming at a time, man, where injuries are an issue. Right. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But I do want to know, because the Seattle Seahawks started off very strong, 3-0. And I know outside of the fan base, a lot of people are like, oh, they're frauds. Look at the quarterbacks that they played. In the last couple of weeks, they've come back down to earth with having a couple losses. But I think a lot of that does have to do with injuries. I mean, they've been decimated on the defensive side of the ball. What is the pulse of the fan base right now after these losses? Are they feeling it? Are they pressing? Are they still confident? Like, where is the mindset of this fan base at this moment?
I think that there's definitely an element of the injuries coming in here that people are putting it a part of that, but there's also a little bit of a feeling of a rechecking, I think, of expectations, and not in a bad way. I mean, this as well, as the fans are so impatient at times and wanting to see things, and in your guys' fan base, you probably have as much a reason because you're in the window. You better be impatient when you're in that sort of Super Bowl window. But with us, we're trying to get into that sort of ascending status and find our footing, and it's a new coach. And so after the first 3 wins, we went, wow, this is actually going to come together really fast. We're going to have an opportunity for this to just click, and that he's not going to take the time we thought he was going to need to take. It does feel a little bit like maybe this is going to need to take the time it is going to take. I think the injury stuff does come into part, but I'd say it's one of those things where it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Both things are true, where both the injuries have held us out. But I think also we're seeing some now kinks showing up the past couple of weeks in the way that this is unrolling out. And so it's making us kind of have to go, okay, let's make sure we're back in that pocket of understanding this was a year about patience. This was a year about being hopeful, but also understanding if it doesn't go perfectly right, that there's good reason for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the 49ers fans were in an interesting spot too. I mean, right now it's win a game, lose a game. Well, lose 2 games and then you win a game. But the 49ers haven't put together back-to-back wins all season. And they've been in these situations where it's like, okay, you're playing a bad Cardinals team in division. Respect to them. They beat the 49ers, 0 excuses. But on paper, the 49ers are better, and they were at home. They should have won that game. They blew a lead. The Rams, same situation. That one, they were on the road, but we know that that's basically a home game for the 49ers. I mean, I was there. It was like 70-30 49ers fans. Rams team depleted. not a good Rams team. 49ers have a good lead. They blow the lead. So the 49ers fans we're cautiously optimistic, where it's like, okay, well, if they can beat Seattle and then somehow beat Kansas City and beat Dallas and go into this bye week on a 3-game win streak, we feel really, really good. But right now, we don't know what to think. This team has started out tough in the past, Brandon. They've started out 3-5. They've started out 2-4, and they've battled out of that. But the difference is this: in those years where they started that way, they've had some wins within the NFC and or the division. This year, they're 0-2 in the division. They're 0-3 in the NFC. That's a tough hole to dig out of when there's tiebreakers at the end of a season that rely on all those things. So 49er fans know that they've got to get it done this weekend. But I got to say, we're pressing a little bit. We're pressing a little bit going into this one as a fan.
I'll say, and this is not going to endear me to my Hawk fandom on this, but with me on this, it's always about honesty as much as anything else. And I've watched your Niner games this year, all of them. To your point, I do feel like that. I know you didn't like it when I said after the Minnesota game, but I do just feel like all the last 3 games here that have gone have been it's in the Niners' control through most of the game. It's everything is being handled appropriately. You're executing on both sides of the ball. You're showing a lot of the typical nature of what we've seen from Niner teams in the past. Some things happen that come up that I would quantify as being a little bit more fluky. Now, you guys might just be snake bit when it comes to special teams this year. And we've seen like the Charger team that everybody likes to reference from 15, 20 years ago that was first in offense, first in defense. Like, look, this can sink a team. So it ain't no thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, you guys played a Packer team a couple years ago, had the same problem come up that sunk them in their season and their run on that. So that's a worrisome enough problem. But I don't think when it comes down to looking at the nature of how the Niners have played so far, it's been somehow that they're unraveling or that the window's closed or that this thing is just about to fall apart. You didn't expect Brandon Ayuk to play great from the jump. He didn't play from the grave from the jump, but he looked like a man-child last week. Wow. It almost looks like that extra month now to kind of get himself back up is going to have an effect. Trent Williams said he wasn't ready and right at the front. So there's some reasons and understandable ones as to why it hasn't clicked through for you guys on that. I think, as I've said for you guys since start, this, you can go back to this offseason. You guys are still the division guys on this. And when you do look at that tiebreaker stuff, that only does factor in if those 2 teams below you that you lost to are going to be up near the top of the division at the end. And I don't think you and I believe at this point that either the Cardinals or the Rams, unless we fall apart completely, are going to be ending up in second place.
Yeah, I mean, I do got to say, I think the Rams have a bye week at the perfect time. I know that they started 1-4, but if they get some of these guys back coming out of the bye week, I wouldn't put it past them to get hot, and put some things together.
True.
I'm not saying that they have an uphill climb for sure, but I mean, let's think about it. If the Niners let's say the Niners win this weekend, all 3 teams in the division have at least 3 losses. So really, they're only 1 game back in the loss column. That's not insurmountable at this point, coming off of a bye week. So I think there is a possibility for the Rams to do something. Arizona, listen, I know they just beat the 49ers, but you're right. I don't believe in them to win the division. Sorry, any Cardinals fans that may be watching. But this thing's going to get interesting. And it does. It starts with your division. You want to win your division. That's how teams do it, right? They build themselves to win the division. And then from there, you're trying to win the conference and then eventually the Super Bowl. But as good as I thought Seattle could be, I had them as a 10-win team. I had the Rams as if they were healthy, as possibly a 12-win team. But I think I ended up putting them at around 11, and then the 49ers a 12-win team. I knew that it would be close. I didn't know that I didn't feel going into the season that anybody could actually take the division from the 49ers. And right now, I think anybody can take the division from the 49ers. I know it's early, but that's just the way that I feel about it.
I mean, make a great point as far as the Rams having some ability to create some dangerous stuff down the road potentially. And we'll see if those injuries come back. I mean, Kupp, Nuka, when they come back, are they going to be at 100%? A lot of those injuries, you're resting, you're not training. They are big parts of the offense, and certainly they get acclimated fast once they're back with Stafford, because he didn't take a minute to figure that stuff out. But I have wondered if that injury stuff would hold up for them. I do watch their defensive line and trotting out. They're doing this whole Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk double defensive tackle line thing at times. And in this past game, you guys were able to attack it a little bit. I've seen teams not hammer it as much, which is essentially they're throwing 2-3 techs out there on a given down at that point. Those guys are 290-ish a piece. you got to get downhill on that and not overthink it too much. I think when it comes down to even you're getting an 8-man box, because Braden Fisk will go backwards when you attack him in the running game. Even now, it's like I know our guy, over on the thing's going to go crazy with him, and if you watch him, it's all coming out of stunts. He's just twisting around the side on all of his pressures. You got 20 pressure, it's all stunts. Have him go head up and let me see him beat a guy with his little stubby arms. But don't let me get on that tangent. So
save it for tonight, Brandon. Save it for tonight.
I will save it for tonight. But I do think yes, the Rams do have that potential. We even got the potential if we could get healthier and this thing could slide together quicker. But you guys are still where you've been and you've earned the right to be there. And I think that you're not going to get necessarily weaker as the season goes along. I mean, Greenlaw is coming back at some point. And it does seem like Pooney's hit for you well on that line, which helps solidify some things on the offensive line for you guys. So, I think that it still is a deserved spot to be in my opinion. On this. And, the Rams get there. I just don't trust their health. I don't trust Stafford holding up for a full season. I really just, I just kind of something with that. I just don't quite, I do agree. They're a good team though. If they can stay healthy, then they're dangerous. If they get those 2 receivers back, then they're as tough as anybody probably in the division.
I just feel like right now as a 49er fan, and I don't know how you feel as a Seahawks fan, but, on paper, the 49ers are one of the most talented teams in the NFL, even with some of the injuries they have. But that doesn't mean that you're the better team always. We saw that in the Super Bowl. And I think, we look on paper and we're like, oh, well, this, as we're looking at the schedule, well, that's a win. That's a win. That's a win. That's a win. I don't think that we're in a position right now, based off of what we've seen, to be predicting wins that are like for sure going to happen. You know what I mean? Like these games have been too tight. They've lost to some teams that they shouldn't have lost to already. Until they go out and prove it, I just don't think it's right to be like, oh, that's a scheduled win. That's a scheduled win. We're not there yet, and maybe eventually they'll get there. Maybe we'll make a turn going into the bye week and we'll come out of the bye week healthy and feeling good and riding a 3-game win streak. That is possible. And then we can start looking at scheduled wins and predicting this schedule. But right now I can't look at the schedule and be like, yeah, that's a for sure win. That's a for sure win. I got to see him prove it.
I think it's a little bit of a symptom of what we're seeing across the league too, right, Jesse? Where after 4 weeks, how many teams were 2-2 in this sport? It's parity is always something in the NFL as a part of the game, but right now this year it feels like the volume is turned up as much as ever on that, and that seems to be affecting everybody. Where nobody's getting through that. Just maybe a couple teams are finding they're like a Vikings, where it's magical for them a little bit or whatnot, but everybody else is kind of just searching themselves. And to your point, you can't really predict off of that week to week because you just don't know, and especially if you come to like a Thursday night game on a short week, for instance, which is even more unpredictable at times. So I think that's a great point with it. It is about building to that best state of things. You guys played a long season last year. You're going to be a little tired. You have a little bit, maybe a little bit, but still dangerous as ever, I think, from their standpoint of it. And we got to take it from you guys. Nobody's going to give it to us. There's our opportunity to cross this division for anybody to step up, and to nobody, again, to your point, that so far has really stepped up and taken the reins.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just so you know, there was a ton of people in the chat that wish you happy birthday on both sides. I put those up.
I appreciate it.
But there's also some super chats. Jordan comes in. He says, happy birthday, hoping both teams are somewhat healthy and it's a good game. Me too, man. I wish more than anything that every team could just always stay healthy and the best team just always won. I hate, and I don't even do it for the 49ers as much as I think a lot of fans would do, but I can look across the league and be like, well, that team lost because these 3 players were out. Like if those guys were healthy, they probably win that game. And I'm doing that with the Seahawks versus the Giants. I'm doing that with the Rams versus the Bears. I'm doing that, with the 49ers versus Minnesota. Like I feel like you can do that across the league and say, hey, I think if this team goes into that game healthy, they win that game 9 times out of 10. And unfortunately, that's just not the NFL. Depth really comes into play, and that's where we're at. MJ Seahawks also with the happy birthday wish.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you guys on that.
God's gang says with Nwosu back on IR. Did he land back on IR? I know he got the thigh injury, but
thigh now. It's went from
great
this to that to this to that. So maybe we'll get him back for a playoff run. I don't know. Anything at this point with Uchenna going forward on this season is pretty much got to be looked at as pretty much cherry or bonus.
Yeah, it feels like that way. Do you think that they'd look to bring in a free agent? Shaq Leonard is intriguing. Any other names to keep an eye on?
I don't know if Shaq Leonard would be the first guy. I would go and push on Carolina heavily for Jadeveon Clowney.
Mm,
He's on a 2-year deal.
that's
It's a very small amount of a flip over to that side. They're not going to require, I don't think, a lot of draft capital back. You need reinforcements in the ranks here. He knows the system back to front, playing in it last year. I love Jadeveon's game. He'd be a perfect fit for what we need right now.
yeah, that would be a great pickup for y'all. Kevin says, honestly, we made Danny Dimes look like a Pro Bowler. I'm scared to death about this game. Go Hawks. Yeah, I mean, I do want to say this. Danny Dimes has had a good 4-game stretch. The outside of the first game of the season where he looked awful, the last 4 games, he's actually looked really good. And again, this comes back to in that game, the Seahawks, by the end of it, were missing their top 3 edge rushers, their best interior defensive lineman, and one of their starting corners. Like, eventually, backups can't do it all.
It's even worse than that, though, because Leonard Williams was obviously not ready to go with that rib. He's out there a shell of himself. You also have Rayshawn Jenkins, who currently and will for this game against your Niners have a club on his arm. And there was about 2 to 3 times throughout the game where hands go around the ball carrier, hands slip off the ball carrier, tackle broken, and he's loose. So he's on top. Julian Love had a thigh thing he's still working through on the Detroit Lions game. Tariq Woolen also rolled his ankle at the end of the game. Don't know where his status is going to be. Don't know if we get Mafe back. Derek Hall also had a foot injury at the end of this game in addition to that. So throw it all in the pile. It's is what it is. Like you say, it sucks to see. Some teams get hit harder than others. It sucks you're 4 or 5 games into this year, and we already are missing, well over half. Feel like we're missing half our defense, or they may be out there, but out there in spirit more than out there physically. And it does. I'd love to come in here and be able to talk a lot of trash and to feel really great about where the team is, but hard, as you just said, on it to look at that on a shortened week on a team let's also remember this, they're going to be playing 3 games in 11 nights. You will be the 3rd game of 11 days that we've had to play a football game. Very, very hard to drum up that confidence in that point and coming into this game against your Niners, wherever you guys may be at in your season.
Yeah, and I know, like, from a rest aspect, the 49ers really were done no favors by the schedule, but this is one where this was a favor done for them, because it is, you're right, three games in 11 nights, but the 49ers then after this have a good rest, but they play Kansas City off a bye, so they actually have less rest. Then they play Dallas off a bye. So, right now the 49ers are on the right side of this thing, but it's definitely definitely lucky on that.
Yeah. And you guys get that first play schedule. That's what, you're going to drive at times, whereas we get the little benefit, a little bit of a dip on that. But I'm not a believer in where Danny Dimes is going at in his game. It may be a little bit improved, but you came into this game without Malik Neighbors. They have a guy like Bellinger at tight end, and Wan'Dale Robinson is basically the number 1 target. And as was the case with the Lions the previous week, it's what drove a lot of Seahawks fans crazy and myself crazy is this was a game stylistically very much like recent Seahawks games under Coach Carroll and stuff that you were lamenting last week on the roundtable, and just you're just lining up guys front 4 and expecting to get to done. You're not doing none of the intricacy that was being brought by McDonald against your Niners back last year when they came in and beat you guys. And it's something that I'm going to be watching for in this game is if he runs and trots out the same game plan we've seen the past 2 weeks against the Lions, trusting the front 4, not a lot of stack boxes, not a lot of seeming creativity to help these players out that are ailing a little bit, instead just trying to keep it simple and easy and getting slayed all the way around. They can run on you, they can throw on you, they can throw short, they can throw long. You're not creating any pressure, you're not causing any turnovers. It's bad all the way around. And if I see that again this week, I'm going to kind of wonder what's going on if you don't trot anything out close to what worked, the prior year on this. So it's a bit confusing on that part too. I'm not trying to kick Danny out completely on this, but we made it really easy on them.
Yeah, that is interesting, because that was our whole conversation. It was like, man, you should be excited about McDonald, and he's a defensive wizard. He's basically the Shanahan and McVay, but on defense, and 5 years ago, and man, he's going to be doing some crazy stuff. And and even Seahawks fans, I remember when we were doing the roundtables, they're like, oh, just wait until they acclimate to his defense. It's going to take half the season, but once they get rolling, it's like, well, if your defense is what it's always been, and that should be the time to dial up things more than ever, because you got to help out guys when they're injured and you got backups in. I think that's one thing that I think the Cardinals did a good job of. I've been talking all year long about how are they going to generate pressure? What are they going to do? Man, they didn't generate a lot of pressure, but there were timely pressures they generated in that game because they showed crazy blitzes and they'd bail out. And it was just, they were all over the place seemingly. And it worked for a team that can't generate pressure with their front four whatsoever. So help them out. That's a weird thing to hear about McDonald and not doing that.
It's blown me away, and it's been 2 weeks, Jesse. It's such a great point on your part. It's not to be undersold. This has been a problem for me. We go back to that Niners game a couple years ago. We walked into it, and I said, you got house money. Let it rip. What do you got to lose, Carroll? Don't just line up and play it the way. It's not going to work that way. You know it won't work that way. You know it won't work that way. And against the Lions, you didn't do any of that helping out that you talk about. None. You set him up there and put him in a position to fail. In this past week, in a lot of ways, I think you did as much the same thing. Yes, you can deal with injuries, but I came back to this on the side of it with McDonald not understanding this. And I don't understand it if he's not going to lean into some of this throughout the course of this year, where you have house money throughout the course of this year. Nobody's expecting anything this year. No, against this Niner team, if you come out and you're blitz heavy and Brock Purdy slays you down the field and he's dropping dimes and throwing over the top and moving out of that, and you were hyper aggressive and trying to get it done, and you come back out of it and saying, hey, look, we're down this, we're down that, we're down this, we're trying to overcome all of the points that you just made. Fandom goes, hey, I get it. You're doing what you can try to do. That's what you do. In the first few weeks of the season, it made sense when you had the prime talent out there on your front four to go get those guys, and they were getting the pressure, and you're leading the league through it with pressure and under 140 yards passing. It made sense. But like you say, you got to read what's going on right now. And when you lose half your defense, get something going. And I think another great point on your part is the Cardinal point, which is that they're not set up right now from a talent standpoint to get it done, but they're doing everything as a coaching staff to help their players, including the blitz at the end that causes the tip pass, that causes the interception.
Yep.
So many teams in that moment are going to sit back in coverage and just try to, we'll make them earn it. We'll make them earn it. I hate that mentality. I hate it. It's so on your heels. Take it to me. Let me bend over and just slowly give it to me. I hate it. Take it. This is supposed to be football. Get up on your toes and go hit somebody. Get up on your toes and get downhill a little bit. And if you get a hit over the top and it's a quick drive, so be it. At least you're not getting bled slow to death by a 13-minute drive. If I got to watch the Niners on a 12-minute, 17-play drive over and over in this game because we're trying to play it safe with a front four and drop deep into coverage, it's going to drive me effing crazy. And I won't understand it. And it won't make sense to me. And these modern NFL coaches, I know offense is down and all that, but there's so many of them that plays things so bloody safe all the time. And if you got the personnel to do it, fine. If we got the Legion of Boom and we can run it with the front four and cover three, then great. But if you don't have that, read the room and understand you don't have that.
Yeah, that one kind of blows my mind. Blaze Jam says, pass more to JP. Jesse, stay safe, bro. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I agree. I think JP Mason's great, and he should get more passes. Concierge with Nolan. Jordan Mason, JP
okay.
Mason. Okay. Yeah. Concierge with Nolan says, happy birthday, Brandon.
Appreciate it, guys. Very kind of you.
Mo Maggot Yalvin says, every team has looked sloppy and underprepared in 2024. Not the Vikings and not the Chiefs, but you're right. I mean, it is definitely a strange year for sure. All right, we've talked about.
They got to get practice going. They got to get more practice in the offseason and more OTAs or more padded practices to get these players better prepared, or the product's going to continue to look like this every time they start the years off.
We talked about the injuries, so we'll skip that one there. But let's talk about this game and what it means. I think, Seattle's coming off of 3 straight wins, like we talked about, followed by 2 losses. They're at home. I don't think Seattle ever wants to lose back-to-back games at home. But the 49ers don't want to lose back-to-back games again, and they are 2-3. So if the 49ers lose and fall to 2-4, 0-3 in the division, 0-4 in the conference, with Kansas City staring them down, coming off of a bye week, I'm going to say you can stick a fork in us. This is a must-win for the San Francisco 49ers. Yes, absolutely. This is a must-win for the San Francisco 49ers, in my opinion. Do you feel the same way for the Seattle Seahawks? Do you feel like this is a must-win for them?
No, but I think it's also a little bit of the expectation difference in our team. You guys come into this and you know that window is sliding shut closer and closer to closed, and that the time is now to get this done. So there's a sense of urgency to you guys that I don't think as much needs to have to be applied here. And I think, in fact, applying a sense of urgency to a team like this with a new head coach would be probably the wrong. It's something some fans were doing after this one of, should have stayed with Carroll, or, to get a lot of that stuff coming off of it. And instead it's like, no, let the cake bake. We just put it in the oven. Let the thing rise. Let's give this its time. So we're hopeful this team can get to a playoff state. They have the talent to get to the playoffs. They have the talent to win this division. But it is about how fast this thing can be onboarded as far as the new systems go, and if the players will buy in. That's the other part of it. I think last week there was a little bit of it. Could have been the players tired on a short week, but there's a little bit of last couple of weeks of wondering a little bit about intensity level and how much buy-in he's getting all the way across the board. And this is carryover from Carroll last year at times, Jesse, in that way. So it's not in that place for us, no, but it is one that, we'd love to get. It certainly would help things, because we've lost you guys so many times over. It would certainly help to start to kickstart a little bit of maybe potentially a run and put us in a good pole position. But I got to say, no, it's still a long season outlook for us on this one. And we get to the playoffs. It's a success. It's a highly successful year. So nothing to winning the division.
Yeah, I think for you guys, falling to 3-3, technically tied with the 49ers, right? Obviously, the 49ers would have the tiebreaker, but you're right in it. The 49ers, I think, fall into 2-4, essentially 2.5 games back of the Seahawks, because you're two back in the loss column, but then you've also got the tiebreaker on them. Being 0-3 in the division, 0-4 in the conference, I think it would be over. I think this team would unravel. I really do. It would take a miracle for them to get back. And unlike seasons of the past, like I've said, yes, they've started 3-5. Yes, they've started 2-4. Starting 2-4 this year would look very different because of the record within the conference and the record in the division. That is not something the 49ers have faced in the past. And that, I think, would be too much to overcome. I really do.
I think it'd be tough for them, but I think I'd have a little more in this. What I think it would come down to is first, even if you guys lost, there's no guarantee this division ends up in a place where 12 wins the division. Could be one of those seasons where 9 to 10 wins ends up winning the division. And that does allow more of an inroads at that point to get in. Does it stop you from getting a first round bye, home field advantage of the playoffs, being kind of a juggernaut? Yes, absolutely, in that way. But this division is looking weaker than it's looked in recent years. And yeah, I know you fell to 2 of these teams, but back to kind of what we were originally talking about, looking at the Niners and watching those games, you guys were in control in those games. It's a bit of the difference, like in our losses to your losses. Your losses, you can kind of pinpoint some stuff and go, okay, that stuff we clean up. In our games with this Lions and Giants, it's like, well, you defensively did nothing. You were a nothing burger at all across the board. You got 0 accomplished really in what you were able to get done and go from tackling to turnovers. And then offensively, you're asking Gino to throw on the cape. Pass protection still remains awful. Run blocking still remains pretty bad for the most part. And you go, okay, it's a little harder to lean back on that and go, I can see where that all comes together than to week 8, 9. Whereas with you guys, you go, okay, we clean up the special teams blunders. At times we get a little more committed to running the ball there, where sometimes still Kyle, it's weird with McCaffrey in there. Doesn't forget with him. It makes sense, like, run? Watching these games, like, pass again, huh? Okay. I know Purdy's playing well, but Jesus. He goes after it. And look, I mean, maybe he just doesn't like what he's got with Garendo behind him. And he's like, But I do think you guys would still have your chance. Would it look as pretty as it's looked in prior years? Would it be an ugly season? Sure, it would be all the way around. But this division does look a little bit this year like we've been one of the better divisions in football for the past few years in time. So it's just maybe not quite at that spot. But again, there's a lot of time. Hard to draw conclusions at this point. A lot of time for the season to kind of fully shake out.
For sure. Cryptic says, how good is the division? Well, this is a great timing on this. Seattle looked like it was going to ride away with it. The Niners were favored. Are the teams here just have more explosive offenses, injuries, and we are just a bad West? Yeah, I do think that this division, more so than any, there's injuries across the league. I do understand that. But for a full division to have the amount of injuries, I mean, we can go through it. It's absolutely insane how many good players are not playing football right now for the Rams, the Seahawks, and the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, all 3 of these teams are very banged up. And you look at Arizona, who already was at a talent deficit. Their first round pick still hasn't played. They've lost 2 of their starting offensive linemen, so they're not actually a picture of health either. It's a weird thing that's happening, and maybe that's the answer, Brandon. It's as simple as who can get healthiest the fastest and stay there. That might be the answer, really.
We're all hitting the D-Day beach Jesse,
Yeah.
and the thing's dropping down and we're all just running out and it's about who can just literally not dodge the bullet, but not get hit by the onslaught of bullets coming down from the top of the German tower, It's,
Seriously, man. It's crazy, man. This is very Hunger Games right now. It's absolutely insane. That really sometimes the answer is so simple and we try to overcomplicate it. Maybe that is the answer. Just who can get the healthiest the quickest and who can stay the healthiest. It really might be that simple. It really
these
may be.
rosters are so shrunk down. They didn't really they added the practice squad, but that had a really, I think, a negligible overall effect on having a good team when the injuries strike. 53-man roster, very limited depth charts. You get hit and you get hit a couple times deep to one position and it can sink much of the rest of the team. It's unfortunate, but it's the nature a bit of the beast by the way that this sport rolls.
Well, if they're going to add, to me, this is not a 49ers Seahawks thing, but now we're talking about the league as a whole, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So if they're going to add another game, first of all, you need the second bye week. That's a must.
Yes.
No team should play a Thursday night game unless they're coming off of a bye. That should also be mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that point, you've also got to start some sort of developmental league and you've got to expand rosters. I think all three of those things need to happen if you're going to have an 18th game, in my opinion, or all four of those things. I think I said four things.
100% agree with you, because also in tandem with this is the fact that the last two CBA negotiations that have gone on between the teams and the owners, the players have not made money the front of the line is issue that they want to deal with. Instead, it is about less practices, less padded practices, no more 2-a-days. That gets removed out, but there was a reason that you did that. Anybody that's ever played football understands how much of a pain in the butt it was going into August out in the middle of the heat and banging around there and putting your body on the line. But you've got to build up that toughness in your body. It's a callus, as the coaches like to say. And right now, these players can't build up those calluses. And this is a bit of why we see so many injuries too, not just from a need to get the depth side, but to have the players prepared. So to your point, if you're not going to do that stuff, if that's never coming back, then you've got to find another way to offset it. And I like your ideas. I think that those would be easy solutions to be able to apply here if the NFL could just stop checking its pocketbook every 2 seconds when it comes to these decisions.
The product's not getting better ultimately, and the NFL is getting a little too big for its britches in the fact that, first of all, every game matters in the NFL. That's why we watch. That's why we're so glued to the television. And the other thing was it was only 2 nights a week, and now it's like you're getting games every night of the week almost. You get later in the year, it's like you got Friday games, you got Saturday games, now you're on Christmas, which could be a Tuesday. It's so you're taking away like this excitement for games on Sunday and Monday. And now you're adding more games to where it's like, really 18 games. Does every game really matter? I mean, not like it used to. You have time to recover. You have time to go through these things. And so you're taking the intrigue of the league and kind of flipping it on its face and being like, well, but we're the NFL. We're arrogant. Listen, when I was growing up, baseball was king. Baseball was America's sport. That's what everybody loved. Football's really only come on in the last 30 or so years. They can lose it if they don't play their cards right, if they just get super greedy and everything's about money. If the product continues to get worse because of injuries and all these other things, people will tune out. They will.
I agree. The reason that the NFL has been able to sustain this a little bit is because those other leagues have also done their own share of vomiting on their shirt in the decisions they've made, and that's only reason that they haven't been able to overtake the NFL. I think in a lot of ways because of how fat and happy the NFL gets. I mean, the NFL is doing it in a lot of different ways with this whole. It's back that pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. And when you look at the NFL and have you seen these fines they're giving out these players in between weeks at times now? And you don't hear about it unless you're really watching on Twitter where a guy, $50,000, and you go watch the hit and you go,
yeah,
they just took half that. They just took that guy's whole paycheck for that game for nothing that was dirty. Like they're trying to, and that's a slow altering of the game on top of everything else that just is awful. And they're doing this stuff a lot of different turns where it's for the worst, for the worst, for the worst, for the worst. And you make too many decisions for the worst, and you suddenly end up with a bad product on the field. And it is kind of slowly starting to get there at times. It's the sloppiness to the, like you said, lack of counting of the games. And that's the thing I say about baseball and basketball is it's such a long ass season. It's like, holy hell, 162 games, 7 months. It feels like playing this thing. Like, really? Is got to be that to determine who's the best? I don't know if it does.
Yeah, it's too much, man. It's way too much. All right, brother. Listen, we've got a ton of injuries in this game. We've definitely hit on that point. But with injuries and just in general, with every year that passes and drafts and free agency, there's always some players that are under the radar that most fans outside of the Seahawks fan base or the Niners fan base may not know about. Give me a player or two that's under the radar that you guys are excited about, whether it's this season or in the future, or might have an impact on this Thursday's game. What do you think?
Well, it's a guy I'm going to go to, and this is a hard answer on this one to normally answer because the defense is kind of so devastated, and there's really not as many things to go there. And offensive line wise, you're in a joke state. And you guys know about our receivers, so it does kind of go down to a little bit of that. I think I'll go to the guy that I've talked to you about a bunch on this, and I think you guys are going to slowly come along this year with it. I'm more and more on this, and that's Geno Smith. I know Niner fan base, and a lot of them are going to have an outlook of him. I know he's played you guys a couple times, so there's going to be a set outlook to this one. But Geno Smith is carrying this football team this year on his back, straight up. I've said over and over again, you get a quarterback that's dealing with the kind of pressure rates he's dealing with, inadequacies as far as the running game goes, a defense that's not able to be consistent and lives on the football field. There's been a couple things fixed this year, Jesse, and I told you this last year, of course. I said there's about 8 big things here that are holding him back from a better performance, and yet he's still performing well amidst those things. And you've taken care of a couple of those things, but many still do remain, and yet he is still playing marvelous football. And I do still maintain what happens when you can start to really, truly clean up more of those things. I'm not saying make the game perfect for him, right? League worst is different than making it league average, right? So that's the place where sometimes I get haters and they go, well, yeah, no quarterback has everything. Yeah, it's all of this stuff, though, down the line and it being at a league worst state. That's what I'm talking about here. And so he's a guy that if you can get some pass protection against this Niners, which I don't know how we're going to do that, but if you can do that, he's going to go out you and show you that he's at a different level this year in how he's playing. They're running up tempo. He's in control of the offense. So, they're getting the plan. He's up there reading everything with 15 seconds on the clock, getting them into the right play. He's slinging it as well as anybody in this league right now. And there's only more room for him to get better once he gets a little bit of a better supporting cast. So this is a guy in prior years that I think you guys were able to shut down mainly on the back of we were 32nd in the NFL at targeting the middle of the field. Your Niner defensive coaches were well aware of us having played Coach Carroll for years and knowing that was a predilection of him to not target the middle of the football field with his offenses. So what'd you guys do? You'd sit down on those out routes to the outside. You'd squat on them. Last year, you had, I think, an interception on one with, I don't know if it was Ward, I forget, but on one of those very routes out to, I think, Lockett trying to run it because you're not going to target middle field. I'll squat on the out. And so that's a lot of now what's going to be removed. There's more targeting in the middle of this field this year, which I think will make it harder on your Niners. But the pressure rates are going to be insane. You're going to have Bosa. Bosa's going to, I think, have a hard time cross. He stepped up this year, and he's starting to really solidify his top 10 status. But it's the other side, maybe with Floyd and Stone as our third tackle we got out there, not the first, not the second, but you're down to your third right tackle out there, where that's really where the Niners can probably create some problems for us.
What does the interior look like? Because I know that interior, that offensive line's been reworked. Connor Williams obviously is coming off of a major injury, but he before that injury was, I think, a top 5 center in the league.
It's so hard to go after you on Twitter because I saw you daydreaming about him for months. I saw you just daydreaming away.
I was too, man.
Connor. I saw, and I was like, I tried so hard not to be the troll thing because it's just like, come on. But the second we signed him, and you guys were in the midst of something too, something was going. It was like right at the height of the Ayuk thing or something. I was like, I'm going to go after Jesse on this one. Oh, we got your center. He's coming back from that ACL. He has been an improvement. We've been league worst there for years now. So, he's maybe into like 20s versus like being in the 30s where you've been. Yeah. So it is a marginal upgrade from where it has been. But the other 2 interior positions have been a nightmare. This might come to shock you, but Laken Tomlinson
is not a good football player.
Did you guys have him at left guard or right guard back in the day when he's playing for you?
We had him at left guard, yeah, and he made a Pro Bowl there, and it actually had a really, really good couple of seasons. But yeah, he hasn't been good with Detroit. He wasn't good with the Jets. He's not good with you. I mean, he's just not.
He's played in the game 12, 13 years. He just can't move his feet anymore. It's not his fault. It was an odd signing in the offseason from us.
Why not start some of the rookies? I mean, you guys got that rookie guard out of Utah I absolutely loved in a late round draft pick. And I just
he's more of a right guard. I think he's
Yeah.
a more of a right guard. I
Okay, well,
think
your
there's
right guard's not any good either, though, is he? So,
well, that's where they're trying to they're trying to fit him in. But I mean, there's a snap last week with Derek Lawrence on Haynes where he picks Derek up, or he picks Haynes up, picks him up into the backfield, throws him away, and then picks up Geno Smith and throws him down. Haynes has had his share of he's been okay. There's been this up and down a little bit. He's not been as consistent
is
as your guys.
Haynes starting at right guard, or is it they just mixing him in? I'm
They've
talking
been
about the
flipping.
Utah kid that what's his name?
Tato Lamea.
Yeah, Lomea. Yeah, exactly.
6th rounder. He had to transition from tackle to guard, so it's
Mhm.
also making the movement. But there was nothing he did in the preseason as a guard that solidified himself there. He might
Okay.
also be dealing with, a little bit of an injury situation, but he's just not
Okay.
been in the mix. They're committed to being Lakin, Bradford, Haynes as the 3 that they're going to operate off of, and find
Okay.
2 within that. But I don't know the Lakin one. You went to a spread style system that's going to call upon your offensive lineman to move in space. That's not
Yeah.
Lakin's game. I don't think it was his game when he
No.
was with you guys before. And Haynes when you watched him back, I had to go back and do like that second take you do after you get the guys drafted. You go back and do another deep dive on him. And the thing you did see with Haynes at the right guard is normally those right guards are going to be maulers in the way they roll. He's more, if I can put it, kind of a finesse right guard, where there's more catching and angling, catching and shield blocking, using his feet to motor around things. So it doesn't quite establish as well over to, I know as it seems weird, to the transition to left guard, because he needs the help then, right? The right guard tends to get the center help, especially on those strong side plays that are going to typically go right. So he kind of needs in the run game then the help from that center to get any kind of drive. And if you put him on a left guard, those 3 techs, that tends to be the one-on-one. That tends to be the one where those guys are going to have to hold up, and especially in the ground game, you're going to have to get push on your own to make it happen. And so with Lincoln, you can kind of see the math they're doing there, where what you do get with Lincoln is an ability to push guys off the ball. He's just a nightmare pass protection, nightmare moving in space. But then we come back to the Seahawks, weirdly don't run the ball consistently this year so far. So it kind of doesn't, it doesn't
make a
all
lot of
make
sense.
sense right now. Yeah, it doesn't all kind of, the math doesn't math right now a little bit.
Yeah, I think for the 49ers, two guys that might be under the radar that are going to have to step up big. You talked about the run game, and I think statistically you look at the 49ers and how many yards per game they give up, and you're like, oh, that's a good run defense. But we did this last year, 49er fans, and we know in watching the games that when teams commit to running the ball, they will eventually run the ball with efficiency against the San Francisco 49ers, okay? So with that being said, Greenlaw is out still. Hufanga, I believe, is going to be out as well. He just very similar to Uchenna and Wosu, where it's like we're so excited to get him back off of an injury, and then as soon as he's back, he got hurt, and then he came back again and he got hurt again. It's like, dude, this guy, he's just bitten right now by injury bug. And so if that's going to be the case, then that means the rookie and Malik Mustafa is going to have to step up big, safety position. And I think a young player, a second-year linebacker, and D. Winters, who I think is very similar to Greenlaw. Now, I'm not going to say that he's going to reach the heights of Greenlaw. It's way too early for that. But as far as his style of play, his physicality, just the way that he attacks the ball, runs through people, gets pumped up after plays, like you see a lot of similarities. And let's not forget that Dre Greenlaw's breakout game is a very memorable one against the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe D. Winters can duplicate that. But I think those are two players that are going to play a lot of snaps this week. And I think these are two players that are going to have to play well if the 49ers are going to come out victorious. So those are the two guys that I'm going to go with this week that Seahawks fans may not know about. But number 53 and number 6, keep your eye on them. I think that those guys might have something to say about this weekend's game.
That Winters hit on McBride last week, and poor McBride coming off the prior week where
Concussion, I know.
He got just destroyed 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then Winters lit him up last week. I mean, that was a hell of a hit. And I've been liking Winters since out of TCU days, man. I've been rolling with Winters as one of your picks. I like that year coming out. So I like your comp with it. I don't think it's out of control as a comp for him and how he can play. And he's really fast. And the Niners know how to use those kind of linebackers. That wide 9 thing is where we come back to the run defense stuff with you guys. And obviously, I know mobile quarterbacks got you guys bit on the butt last week again with the Kyler Murray first touchdown run where he hadn't pieced you guys out on that one. But that wide 9 stuff, again, as you watch the team and then you watch the counter that comes down to it, where it goes, okay, wide 9. Okay, it's the Cardinal team that can run the ball with Connor. That's a hard day at the office. All right, now what are we going to do? Okay, well, here comes the safety, and we're going to commit down to a 4x4 up around the box. And so now you start to put things a little bit more in peril on the back end as far as throwing a lot of more one-on-one opportunities with your corners and receivers on the outside. And you're doing that in large part, to me, kind of countering it back because you have the natural gaps that do exist there in that wide 9 alignment. It's like, well, you're countering this because of that, and then you're putting yourself in perilous shape because of this. We kind of do the similar stuff to a smaller degree where you'll see those. I've lamented it. It's in the NFL now. It really requires gap integrity from the guys coming downhill on the backside. It's really less about those guys in the front like it used to be now. And you get those 2 defensive tackles aligned like, this, and then the wide 9 guys out here, whether they're standing up or putting a hand in the dirt, like your guys put a hand in the dirt, ours guys will stand up. But that is you put a Buick through those holes naturally. And I look at it and I go, I wonder from a defensive coordinator position, Jesse, and maybe you got an answer on this one, how do you expect your linebacker drive, the safety then to drive in the gap before you've had the downhill push, especially if you have duo blocks at the point of attack on a power? If I go at one of those spread out defensive tackles, duo block, you get pushed, we're coming quick down with it. Unless you're anticipating it and reading it prior to the snap that it's going there, it's like, that's a freebie 3 to me. And I don't, and to me, what you do then is then you do try to cheat, you do try to force. And now here comes the wide stuff opening up, and it becomes this sort of push-pull game that doesn't have to be created in the first place. I know the wide 9 worked right before, but it worked great before when you had Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner and Bosa out on the outside. And you had those, you come back to, again, you want to trust the 4-man stack, then you need a 4-man stack from hell to make it done, to make it go. But that's going to be the key in this game, Jesse, is can we attack with Walker, who's having a great start of his year? Can we get into those gaps? Can we attack into that area? Can we stay committed to it, which has been a problem this year?
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point, and I think this is where teams struggle against the 49ers. Teams that come in and try to go horizontal on the 49ers, that's not how you beat the 49ers. You got to go right at them. Yeah. You got to go at them vertically in the pass game, and you got to go at them with duo, like you said, and get a power run game going. If you do those things, you're going to stay in the game with the 49ers. But the moment you start going sideline to sideline and start letting Fred Warner dictate it with his speed and Greenlaw when he's healthy with his speed, and the corners can tackle well, like you're dead in the water. You cannot do that against the 49ers. And I think the Jets had that game plan, and I think it crushed them week 1. And I think we came out of that game like, oh, maybe the run defense is pretty good. And then the very next week, it's like, no. Minnesota's just going to run right at you, and then they're going to go vertical in the pass game. And both of them worked. And so every single week when you've seen a team be able to execute and do those things, they've been successful against the 49ers. But if you want to go horizontal against the 49ers, you're going to lose that game, and the 49ers can boat race you very, very quickly. That is not how you beat the 49ers. You've got to go right at them, make those linebackers tackle, make those corners cover deep, and those safeties stay disciplined and in their zones and not, chasing the ball with some eye candy. You really got to make everybody play and make them play out of their comfort zone. And some teams do it well, and some teams don't even try. But I think the teams that try and stick with it, they do eventually do very well against this 49ers defense.
You got to stick with it too. If it doesn't work early, you got to stay with it because it's not an easy defense to get over. It's played still stout for the most part this year.
Cardinals
holes. It's just, like Cardinals did stay in.
They had like 5 carries for 9 yards or whatever it was, or 9 carries for 14 yards or something stupid in the first half. And then it was like, oh, no. Now Connor's just going to take over the game because the defense is worn down, and they're just right back at him. And it was too much, man. They couldn't handle it in the second half, and Connor just did whatever he wanted.
A great defense is not going to have 5 inroads to beat them. There's going to be 1 inroad to beat them most often. And you guys have a legit, really good defense. They've earned that right the last few years, down Dre Greenlaw or not. They are still in that place. And that's what I agree. I do agree with you on this. I think that there's really a pathway of having to get this done. It isn't Gino going out and throwing 52 times in this game. It isn't going out and trying to throw a little West Coast offense, 7-yard throws in the game on that. It's, I think, like you said, power run game, hit your deep shots over the top when those opportunities present themselves. And that's as much for us, I think, offensively, where it's going to have to come down to if we're going to have to hope to make hay. And then, going against your guys' offense is a whole nother, ball of wax on how to deal with that one, as you guys got kind of the means to be able to attack us, where we've also been a little bit in troubled shape as well on that defensive side of the ball.
Absolutely. Wi-Fi, ask and you shall receive, but make sure that you're not blocking anybody without me saying it's okay. And you can remove spam from the chat. Anybody that's going personal at anybody in the chat, you can definitely put them on timeout, but do not block anybody without running it through me first. But yes, ask and you shall receive, man. You are now a moderator. Appreciate you. All right. Seahawks Gaming says Derek Hall, comeback player of the year. Well, he's got to come back this week, right? Like he's already hurt. He's got to come back this week, I think, to be in a conversation like that. But if he does and he continues to play at a high level, do you think that that's a possibility?
I think he's just doing what it'll be hard to get a comeback player because I don't think he's coming back from being, bad. He just had there's a very long lineage of this, and something to keep in mind of if you run into your Niners doing the same thing, because it's something that the data on this is very firmly established, Jesse, going back 10 years. If you look to specific second round edge rushers, there is a large amount of names that don't do much in the first season, but then the second season they come back around and they can kind of hit the ground and roll. And that this happened with Boye Mafe. It's happening now with Derek Hall. It's just, you have to be patient with those second rounders versus maybe a first rounder where you're like, he better start out doing some stuff, and so it's a weird thing, that whole nothing, you get nothing in the first year from him, but go look back, folks, at second round edges taken over the last 10 years. And indeed, I think the high that you get on a second round edge that I found was like 4.5 sacks in their first rookie. That was as big as I could see, and not really good run defenders on top of it. So takes a year to develop. Sometimes it's a hard position to learn. And unless you're a freakazoid that's just got some insane kind of skill coming into it, it's going to take a bit of time, but he is a really good player. We've got our edges set for the future, and Hall and Mafe, guys that can be up in that 13, 14, maybe even 15 sacks a year, while then also giving you good run defense in addition to that, where they're stout on both ends of it. Love the upside of both of these guys in the future. We got hits with both of these two players, which is the most important part here. And certainly in both cases, those are guys that I think are going to be kind of in that perennial Pro Bowl level. I'm not calling all pro necessarily, but perennial Pro Bowl-ish level. And if you can stack two guys to the inside for the future around them, we're going to have a hell of a defensive line.
Yeah. Unfortunately for Seahawks, neither of them might play this weekend. They both might be out, or excuse me, on Thursday. They both might be out on Thursday.
Leonard will play, but I don't think he's.
Leonard will, but Mafe and Hall might both be out. Yeah,
I think they're going to run Mafe and Hall out. But again, even if these guys are run out there, how healthy are they? And then how much are they diminished by the fact that they're not 82%, 83%? Going against a really great Niner team. I mean, hard to beat Trent Williams as it is as Mafe. You're going to go out there as an 83% Boye Mafe against Trent Williams. Yeah. That's probably a long day at the office. For sure.
MGS liquor. I don't know what all that means. You got the Northern Lights. Okay. You got the Northern Lights in there. That looks good. This game feels like two drunk guys who got kicked out of the bar for getting into a fight, but it's a good fight because they're both equally impaired. Yeah, it does kind of feel that way. It really does. And there looks like there might be rain in the forecast. And so far, as odd as it sounds, Brock Purdy's kryptonite has been rain for whatever reason. He's really struggled in rainy weather. A lot of people try to point to his hand size, but his hands are the exact same size as Patrick Mahomes. So maybe it's the way he grips it, but I don't think hand size itself is the issue. He just hasn't played well in the rain. So if it rains, that's a whole nother factor that we can look at as well. I'd love to see it, man. We could use some equalizer in this game a little bit. So that would definitely serve to, I think, be that a little bit in that part of it. So, but also could work in your guys' favor, because if we're trying to hit you in the run game heavy, but then hit you with deep shots over the top, it's harder to hit those deep shots in those kind of conditions. So there could be a bit of an inverse to that on the other side of it. But yeah, I'll take the rain. You give me a choice on rain or not, I'll take the rain in this game for this particular matchup where we stand. You know what matchup I'm really excited for? And I didn't have this as a topic, but I was just thinking about it. Mm-hmm. There's a low-key rivalry happening between Charvarius Ward and DK Metcalf. I'm excited to watch that matchup again, because last year, Ward certainly got the better of him, but I think DK is excited for this game. I think that this one's going to be a fun one to watch. I'm really excited to see those two go head to head at parts through this game and see who's able to come out on top. I think it's a fun, even matchup, and I think it's just there's a lot of competitiveness, a lot of physicality in that one. I'm really excited to see how that matchup shapes out.
I am as well. I think the interesting part I'd ask you about on this too is how does Tre'Davious Ward do when he's put into slot?
I don't. This is what's interesting. So Charvarius Ward isn't somebody who's traveled a lot in his career, but last year when they played the Seahawks and the Eagles, so the bigger body receivers, they had him travel with those guys. Now, obviously, new defensive coordinator, so maybe he won't travel there. So maybe we just might get the matchup a few times throughout the game, and we'll have to be excited when we get it. But if he travels, I don't know that they'll have him travel to the slot. That could be interesting. Is DK running a lot out of the slot this year?
That's been the new two things they've done. There's three main things they've done differently from DK, because prior what you do is you'd line him up as an X. So the X receiver is always going to get pressed. So that always lend itself well into helping Tre'Davious lean into what he wants to do with DK, like you say, which is be physical. You know, I don't have him as a Z off the line or in motion, so I can get the hands on him. And then if you did have safety help over the top with a cover two, you could roll that pretty easily off the press and trail coverage. You know, you always got that bracket in place. But what they have started to do now is more motion, and they've started to do more from the slot. So the touchdown that he had in the Patriot game where he took the top off the defense for a big play, he's in the slot. Against the Detroit Lions a couple weeks ago, you have Carlton Davis following him. Carlton Davis goes in the slot, and I asked this question because a lot of those outside corners don't want to play slot. And he cooked him up. He cooked DK on a route on Carlton Davis into that slot, took the top off the defense on the very same kind of play. So it'll be interesting to see how the Niners decide to play that. Yeah. But it is a bit of an interesting, it is a cool little wrinkle that Grubb has brought, along with putting him in motion, along with running DK on drag routes. You know, it always used to be just getting him up the field there, and there's not at times making a point of emphasis to really target him and treat him like a true blue one, like you would. And there's more of that going on this season, and we're getting more out of DK because of it.
Yeah, well, and Demo, I think, is our best corner, and so I think the 49ers would be smart to just let Demo take that because that's where he plays. He does play that slot corner position. So I if I were the 49ers, I wouldn't let them bait Charvarius into traveling into that slot. But if they do, I think it'll be a lot of fun. And what's interesting about it is, like I said, we didn't really see Charvarius travel last year either. But all of a sudden, when they played Seattle, he did travel, and it was like, oh, okay, this is something new. So I'm curious to see if they break that out again this game. I know Charvarius Ward is very vocal, and he will ask for certain matchups, and that's kind of what happened last year, and they obliged. I wonder if he'll be asking for that matchup again, and if that's the case, yeah, I'm curious to see if he does travel in the slot as well. Interesting. I'll also JSN, man, he's starting to put it together, at least from the little bit that I've watched. I think he's starting to become a bit of a threat. So you've got three really good receivers right now that if the Seahawks want to, and they just want to go pick on Isaac Yiadom, let's say this weekend, or excuse me, Thursday. I keep saying this weekend. On Thursday, then they can do that because they've got three receivers that can really make this thing happen.
They really can. And Jason's coming along. There's still some blemishes in spots. Big brutal drop last week as we're, before the kick gets blocked on a third down play, he's got a drop for a first down there that keeps that drive going and probably puts you in a position to go get that touchdown. There's been a couple of drops in there. There's been some good plays on the other side of it. They're still at times finding the exact plan to how to use him, but the talent is there and he is capable. Lockett is still getting it done out there and finding a way. And you do get to feel really with Lockett and Geno, especially. These guys have now, thrown with each other for 5-6 years here. Geno started for 3 years, but he's also been here 3 years prior to that. And they've got that chemistry and connection you get a little bit of through time with quarterback to receiver when they played that long, where there's just throws Geno's able to make to Tyler, back shoulder throws where he just puts it to a spot and he just knows Tyler will be looking for, and the corner has no chance on the play. It's not even really Tyler's getting open. It's just that connection is so strong right there between those two guys and their understanding of how to play with each other, which really does stand out and has helped in Geno's ascent, despite what might be holding him back as far as running game and pass protection. The receivers are legit, and his connection and his ability to work with them is legit as well.
JSN had a play last week that's not going to show up on the stat sheet whatsoever. But what play I'm talking about, where he goes deep and he just acts like he's going to catch the ball, and all of a sudden the two defenders converge on him and like try to hit the ball away that's not coming his way. Meanwhile, Geno Smith is running 30 yards downfield. It was such a smart headsy play by him to just even fake as if the ball was coming his way. That's not usually something you see out of a second-year player, and those are the little things that I do appreciate, where it's like, man, you did something that nobody in the world, unless they're watching this game, is going to know that it happened, but it helped potentially win a game. Now, in Seattle's case, they didn't win that game, but you get the point. He's making game-winning plays even when the ball's not coming his way, and I think that's pretty cool to see for a young player.
Can you tell them a little bit on the other side of that, as we're talking about receivers? Can you tell the Seahawks fans, who, as a guy that they've seen come through, but when he's come through before, it's been just a sample size of snaps, and they've had him out there really to run block in prior years on this, but really the ascent has been staggering of watching Juwan Jennings really come up this year and not just be a functional fill-in receiver, not just be a competent guy. But I mean, geez, he had a one-handed catch last week where it didn't count, fall out of bounds, but still had no business reeling the ball in, had no real opportunity to reel it in, and still found a way to last week. He's a real threat for you guys, even though you haven't had poor Ricky Pearsall able to get out there this year for you guys, your first-round pick.
Yeah, Juwan Jennings is he really is the glue guy on offense. I mean, it's interesting because Fred Warner on a podcast 2 years ago was asked by Richard Sherman, who is the best player on the 49ers? And this is, you're talking about a stacked team. Okay. His answer was Juwan Jennings 2 years ago. It was crazy. It was like, what? Juwan Jennings? But what he meant by it is like, he's going to be consistent. He's a phenomenal blocker. If you throw him the ball in a big time moment, he's going to make a grab. If you give him a 50-50 ball, he's going to outfight the DB for that ball. He brings a physicality to this offense and a swagger to this offense that is tough to replicate and duplicate. And looking at it right now, I'm not going to go as far to say that Deebo Samuel is washed. Deebo Samuel right now, though, is a shell of himself. And we'll see, because Deebo Samuel is 29 years old, 28, 29 years old, and he's played a physical brand of football. You wonder, can he carry that into his 30s like most receivers can? His brand of football is not the same as most receivers. And so maybe the wheels are starting to fall off. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go as far to say that he's washed, but it doesn't look good right now. Juwan Jennings has really ascended. He's only out there for about 60% of these snaps when everybody's healthy. He should be out there all the time, in my opinion. I think he's done enough to earn being out there for 90% of those snaps, 100% of those snaps if possible. A lot of people have already pushed him past Brandon Ayuk. I'm not going that far. I think Brandon Ayuk has started out slow, but Brandon Ayuk has been very consistent. Brandon Ayuk just had a great game last week, and I think kind of made some people ease up on him. But Juwan Jennings is a very, very good player in this league, very capable player, and he can hurt you in a multitude of different ways. And if the 49ers had won the Super Bowl last year, Juwan Jennings would have been the MVP of the Super Bowl. So he is a big-time player, absolutely.
Yeah, he's been impressive every week. And you look at Deebo, it is that situation coming down the line too after the season where there's going to be some tough cuts needing to come in from the Niners in a couple of different directions. And you can't help but think that that's one of the places that they'll start with a little bit, because you're going to have to make some cuts. And I think they're going to do some of that advanced math you just did on, the lay of the, he was sort of the McCaffrey before the McCaffrey there in the usage at times with Kyle on some of those playoff runs, especially, which you can't blame him, and like that Packer game a couple of years ago and on the road where it's just Deebo. But, you do pay the price down the road of that a little bit. If the Niners had, I'm not trying to gaslight you here, Jesse. If the Niners had, I did this last week, T, and I know I did. If they had drafted an offensive lineman and then drafted Pooney in addition to the offensive lineman with the first round pick, what would the record be right now versus what it is? What would the record be at the end of the season versus what it's probably going to be?
Honestly, I don't know that their record would be different because Kyle Shanahan doesn't play rookies unless he's forced to. I'm going to tell you right now, Brandon, if the 49ers didn't have injuries to Burford and Feliciano, we still wouldn't know who Dominic Pooney is. I would almost guarantee it. Pooney would be on the bench, and we'd be hoping that he's good in the future, and we'd have no idea what the 49ers have waiting in the wings. They just wouldn't have it. Jordan Mason, he's been on this team for 3 years. You're just now hearing about him. We knew he was good. We knew he had 64 carries at like 5.6 yards a clip or whatever it was, or 84 carries at 5.6 yards a clip coming into the season. We knew he was good at running the football, but Kyle wouldn't let him onto the field because he wasn't a good blocker, and he wasn't a good route runner, and so he just didn't touch the field, even though he was way better than Mitchell as a runner. That none of that mattered. Jawan Jennings, I mean, he was cut from this team at one point and fought his way back and has done all the things that he's done. So there's, it's very hard when Shanahan is the head coach to earn his trust and make your way onto the field. I don't know that this team would look any different if they had drafted an offensive lineman in the first round, because I think that they would probably have still gone with McKivitz or Brindell, whatever position they had drafted, until an injury happened and they were forced to, or until next year happened. I really believe that.
Was there a position in the moment, other than, let's say, offensive line, then at that pick that would have happened that you would have said, if we're going to this guy instead, who maybe would have been forced to play out there, this would have been we'd be in better shape as a team right now, both short and long term?
I mean, long term, certainly. I mean, if they had gone like JPJ or I forget who the center out of West Virginia was, somebody like that. Yeah, Frazier. I think long term they would have been better for it. But this year, I don't know. I don't think that there was a player out there that would have made the difference at this point. I really don't.
Maybe an Edrin Cooper, Packers took first man inside linebacker. Tough watching Devondre Campbell get eaten up on those wheel routes, bro.
Listen, Devondre Campbell is not a good player, but remember, Brandon, this is the same coach in Kyle Shanahan that watched Raheem Mostert burst onto the scene in 2019 the way that he did, and in the Super Bowl started Kevin Coleman. All right, so this is par for the course for what Shanahan does. Sometimes I don't believe that the best players play. He wants guys that fully understand the system, and he knows that he can at least count on to be in the right spot. Whether they make the play or not is irrelevant, but as long as they're where he expects them to be, they're going to play. So it's just the way that he's ran things. I think it's one of the few areas where he needs to improve. It's one of the most frustrating things as Niner fans, but it's just the way that things are done here. It's just the way things are done.
If you lost to us this week, do you think there's going to be any of those Niner fan base after the game would say, get this defensive coaching staff to the curb and get Saleh back in here?
Oh, a loss doesn't have to happen. It's already started. The moment that Saleh was fired, everybody is like, can we get Saleh back this year? Like right now? Can we make that happen? Oh, no. That's already happened. Yes.
He's probably going to be brought back they'll have him as a consultant or something. They'll do that with coaches sometimes where, I'm sure they'll have him in a Niner hat within about 3 weeks on the sideline or something there. Boy, did he get dirty? He got done a little dirty by the Jets there.
That was bad. That was bad.
Got him.
That was bad.
Oh, Jesus. Escorted and really? Escorted? Like, what, do you think he's going to get violent? Like,
yeah, dude, absolutely crazy. Cryptic says, what's going on? It's great, Brandon, because whatever the Seahawks are bad at, Shanahan will do the opposite. Arizona was really bad at run defense. Let's go shotgun and pass all over the yard. Yeah, that's exactly what happened, man. It's that was an interesting game plan to say the least. Addie's the Gamer says, I'm a member. He became a member over on your channel.
Thank you, Addis.
I know Brandon appreciates that. Yeah, that's awesome.
I appreciate you for that, Addis. Thank you, brother.
Robbie Red says, getting ready for Hurricane Milton. Go Hawks. Are you in the Tampa Bay area as well as a Seahawks fan? I'm in the Tampa Bay area, and I'm also getting ready for it, but not Go Hawks. It's Go Niners. Come on. I love Gammon because he's always an asking off the wall question. Gammon says, last movie you saw in theaters?
Holy moly.
It was the last Despicable Me with my kids. Despicable Me 4 or whatever it is that they're on now. That's the last one I saw in theaters.
I don't know if I can remember literally the last time I went to a movie and saw a movie in the theater. It's been so very long since I did. So I like the home.
It was The
experience.
Notebook. We'll say The Notebook.
Yeah, we'll go Notebook. A girl drugged me there. I mean, that's a total girl drugged me there. I didn't go there on my own.
Yeah. Or with the friend.
Back-to-back shows. I wasn't there at the matinee and the later show.
Gavin says worst weather, Washington or Florida. I love Florida's weather. Now hurricanes suck for sure, but I moved from the Pacific Northwest to get away from that weather. Not Washington, but Oregon, same difference. So I'm going to go with the Pacific Northwest being worse weather. But as far as like damaging weather, definitely Florida's worse.
I was going to say, if you want the consistent winter or do you want that boomer bust? This is one of those kind of football questions. You know what I mean? Because if you want the consistent winter of bad weather, just going to drive you crazy and like just, I'm depressed today again. I haven't seen the sun in 95 days straight. I'm not joking. Well, then Washington wins out. But if you want a piece of weather that's going to end up dumping you in the Gulf of Mexico when it's said and done, and that there's a real chance of something like that, then, well, we don't have anything like that in Washington. I mean, we might get a typhoon every 30 years, but that's just going to be a little extra breezy weather. You guys get like, it literally picked me up and it put me over here. I was here and it put me over here and my dog's up there. I don't know where my house is.
It's definitely a real thing. Gavin says, why are Seahawks fans better than 49er fans? Ooh, he wants you to make your case.
Well, I always say this is always a tough question. Well, look, we are the only fan base that's ever created a league causing a penalty. So we in the 80s forced the NFL to cause a penalty on us for being too loud. No fan base can ever come up with that. We came up with a whole thing that includes all of the fans in the whole stadium at once. No other fandoms really come up with that other than your little like tomahawk chop people or something like that. But we're the ones who originated the wave. We set an earthquake. We're the only fan base that literally has set an earthquake by how loud we've been. If you want even more corroborating evidence, but if that's not enough for you, we sent a Guinness World Book of Record. And then the Chiefs came back and cheated, by the way, to then set the record and go over the top of us because our mic was on the field. The Chiefs put the mic right up into the mouth. In fact, the back of the throat of one of the fans right into the stands. So they got a little closer to overtake that record. But to me, the record still ours is legit. So there's 4 points right there as to what makes this a little bit of a difference maker as far as a fan base go. Hell, we retired our fan base. We were so good. Our team retired a number to us. We were so loud and so effective.
Well, that's a good case, man. That's a good case. The only thing I can say to dispute that right now off the top of my head is I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I lived there for 35 years. I never saw, now again, it was in Oregon. So to be fair, I was not in Washington, but I never saw Seahawks jerseys up until they finally got good. And so I will say,
doesn't have a lot of real Washington love connection. I got to say that on the forefront of it. Like there is not a like that's our sister state or it's really not. It's like
Vancouver, Washington. I lived in for about 5 years as well. I'll say it was the same over there. Now maybe it's still more Oregon. Maybe there's still more like. They got the Oregon base over there because it's very south. I'll buy that. I'll buy that. What was that?
What's the years we're talking about here?
The years that I lived and or worked in Vancouver would have been 2006.
So that's right.
2006 Super Bowl. To 2000. Actually, no, 2004 to 2009. 2004 to 2009.
So it's lower on the corridor there at Vancouver, but I mean, 2005 when I'm in that city and I was up and down that area for work and all of that stuff. And, from where I went down to the Tacoma up to all the way to the north end on it, Seahawks took that place over in 2005. I mean, that was our first Super Bowl we went to, at that point. And that was still very much reverberating, even on the back of it throughout the state. So, I mean, if there's a bit of a point there, there's a fair weather fan base. I don't know. I don't think that, they're pretty. And when it comes to as far as geographical spread, We go all the way up to Alaska. We go out to Hawaii. We go out to Western Montana. We've got big parts of Idaho that we are more Seahawks fans than everything else. And I've been in person in all those places to test to this and speak to the people myself on it. So it's, I lived in Montana. I lived in Western Montana. So it's like way more Hawk fans than anything else over there on that side. Maybe Eastern Montana is different. I think there are more Vikings on the eastern side of Montana, but we got a pretty good geographical spread as well on top of local.
Yeah, I think I also think 49er fans can take over a stadium like most cannot. I mean, even Pittsburgh, that's the one that actually impressed me the most. When they were marching, first of all, after the Saints game in 2019, and they were marching down the streets, and that was an amazing thing in itself. But when I went to Pittsburgh week 1 last year, and Steelers fans were like, we've never seen an opposing fan base take over our stadium like this. Like, congratulations to y'all. You did a good job. I was like, all right. Pittsburgh is a storied franchise, and it's week 1. Everybody's excited. So that made me have some pride in being a 49er fan for sure.
Yeah, no, that's very impressive to be able to pull that off. It's not easy, especially in Pittsburgh place like that. Those tickets are on backup, I'm sure, as far as seasonal tickets and all that stuff.
Mo Maggie Yalin says the most on-brand outcome for both teams is a tie. Well, Mo Maggot, it's almost like we paid you to be the guy who flips over the segment because we have gotten to this point in the show. And listen, here's the thing about Brandon and I. We always set a time before we go live of how long a show is going to last. And we even skip topics. And somehow we could literally talk for 3 hours every time we do a show. But I'm not going to let that happen tonight because I've got hurricane preparation and this man's got a birthday to celebrate. So I'm going to skip a few here and I'm going to go to the end and say, we need a score prediction. And Mo Maggot's saying, hey, let's just make it a tie. That's the way that we're going to do this thing. Which
I'll take a tie. We can just do bet right now. We don't need a loss. How about we go tie and then no play? We just save the players. Everybody gets healthy. Go to the next now. And I wish I had more confidence coming into this game, Jesse. And I still am very supportive of the direction this team's taken. They finally have, I think, fixed a variety of things that had been issues with this organization for years, from the front office to the coaching staff. And those things have been fixed, but Rome's not been built over. It wasn't built overnight, and it's not going to be built overnight with this. And if we came into this game healthy at home, I'd say that we could take your Niners because there is some vulnerabilities this year, but we're not healthy. There's half of a defense is out. Leonard Williams with his rib, multiple edges. Byron Murphy, our first round pick, will not be playing in this game. I think both of our inside linebackers are dealing with some kind of injuries. The club on the hand of the safety. Tariq Woolen may or may not play in this game. You look at how light you are defensively and then how bad the defense has played against legitimate offense. There's not legitimate offenses, but at least somewhat challenges the past 2 weeks. And you go, well, how are you going to withstand that against an Iron team that can both run the ball and pass, that can do creative things, that can hit you in a variety of ways? And that's the part I come back to on this game is I think against your defense this year, I think our offense can score its share of points. But I think your offense, I don't know how we stop them. We can't stop Daniel Jones. So I think you guys probably hang 30 on us. I think we probably score like 21-23, something like that. But I think it's probably a touchdown win for you guys the way we're playing, unless something remarkably different turns. Now it is again, just let's add on to this. These Thursday night games are quirky and weird. Road teams take it in the shorts over and over on these kind of games.
Yeah.
Now it's a short flight for you guys, so it's not as much a going cross country thing, but harder to predict these kind of games above all else, I would say, just as a kind of maybe asterisk to my prediction. But if it fits to form how it's played so far this year, even with your guys' bumps, I think it flows like that.
Yeah, I think, right now the 49ers offense is stopping itself. Between the 20s, they're arguably the best offense in the league. I mean, statistically, that's kind of bearing out as well. But right now they are at, I think, 40% touchdown rate when they reach the red zone. It's bad. I mean, they went from literally first in the NFL to one of the worst teams. And it's been all year. I mean, I've been talking about it. This is now my third week in a row talking about it. Going into the Rams game, I said, hey, they're 50%. Then they came out of the Rams game 50%. Then I'm like, hey, going into the Patriots game, they're 50%. They came out of it 50%. And I'm like, hey, guys, we're going into the Cardinals game. They're still at 50% touchdown rate in the red zone. And they went 1 for 6. So, listen, they've been beating themselves in the red zone.
Your opinion on that, So conventionally, it always comes down to that you get inside the 20. It's about how you're running the ball effectively. But
Mhm.
there's sometimes the question I have with Shanahan about the commitment level, which sometimes can come and go at times with him. So with this, which of those two do you ascribe that to? Is it the lack of staying with Mason getting down there, or getting too cute, or is that you just aren't running as well down there inside the 20?
I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely think that at times they're getting pass happy in the red zone. And I also think that things tighten up a little bit. And so Mason hasn't maybe been as effective in the carries he's had. I mean, he did have a fumble last week in the red zone, his first career lost fumble. But there are also times where, dude, they're getting inside the 5 and they're throwing 3 straight times. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you literally have a power running back, and not only are they throwing 3 times, Brandon, but they're running like double move routes as if there isn't a back of an end zone. It's like, what? How do
Didn't they
you
throw a
expect
fade
these
last
guys to
week
get open
too? Wasn't a fade ball too last
to
week at one
Kittle?
point?
Yeah, I think to Kittle. Yeah.
I know he got the triple coverage one the previous week, but
Yeah.
it was a little bit like it's like those plays you get the goal line on those throws. Sometimes you're like, well, that was a wasted one. Like
Yeah.
that rep had no chance of
Yeah.
that was not why do we think that had a chance to make that work like that? That
Yeah.
you know, and that was our problem last year too. We just throw all over the place down inside the 20.
It's just like, it doesn't make any sense at all. So I mean, can the 49ers fix their red zone woes? Maybe a banged up Seattle Seahawks team is exactly what they needed and they can get around it. But I'll say this. My prediction will change. I haven't picked any team to beat the 49ers this year. And right now, in this moment, I'm picking the 49ers to win 23-17. But I will say this right now. If Hall plays, Mafe plays, Tariq Woolen plays, and it's raining, give me the Seattle Seahawks. Now, that's a lot, right? That's a lot that has to go right for the Seahawks. If any one of those things is not happening, I am not moving off of my 23-17 49ers prediction. But if those 3 players are playing and it is raining, I am picking the Seahawks. I am flipping my pick to the Seahawks. Just know that. So,
Even if it's
Hall,
misty
Mafe,
style?
Tyreek Woolen, and rain. What?
Even if it's a little that misty rain, that Pacific Northwest
Doesn't matter.
misty rain
Nope,
again,
doesn't matter.
any kind of precipitation. Yeah, that's
Yeah. If the fans are spitting from the stands, I'll count that too. That's like that also counts as rain. Like, I don't care what kind of rain it is.
We
Yes.
got to get our local Native Americans in on this with some of the old, rain dances stuff here on this one's what I'm hearing from you. We got to enlist some of our hawk folks that are up there out a little up in the north on that side. Make it done.
You know, it's Mo Maggot brings up a really good point. And I hate that he's bringing this up because, and also shout out to you, Mo Maggot. You literally went from channel to channel. You gave a super chat on both of them. You're awesome, man. Awesome,
Yeah,
dude. Awesome. Love that.
Very
And I
supportive.
know he's a Seahawks fan, but he's still supporting. So thank you. I just know that I noticed that and I appreciate it. But he does bring up a good point. You know, it's funny because I glossed over this part of it, but I talked about how D Winters, maybe he can replicate what Greenlaw did against the Seahawks and have his breakout moment. What I didn't talk about was a Thursday night game. I want to say it was 2021, if I'm not mistaken, where the 49ers were missing their kicker. And they had a chance to win that game, I believe, in overtime. And their kicker missed so poorly wide left. It was atrocious. And somehow the Seahawks won that game. Dre Greenlaw also had a pick in that game, by the way. But it didn't matter because a guy that you previously mentioned, and Jadeveon Clowney, took that game over by himself. And our kicker couldn't make a game-winning kick because it was the backup kicker. Well, this week, the 49ers also have a backup kicker who hasn't made a kick in the NFL since 2022. So that could play a factor for sure. It really could.
I was so getting excited. They were showing Juszczyk warming up on the sidelines in the last game for you guys. I was like, ooh, we're going to get a Kyle Juszczyk field goal attempt. Let's go. It was the punter did all right. Yeah. He knocked that one through. You got to give the guy credit. It looked at least, it didn't look like the wobbly ones where those guys will come in. You're like, oh, jeez.
No, look good. It
We
looked
just
good.
go for it on fourth down the rest of the day, huh, fellas? But that's a good point. That's a great point, y'all. And to your point, down a kicker, and it's not hard to find these guys off the street. I know Dicker hasn't exactly won the hearts over in San Fran necessarily, considering where he was drafted at, but that's still a much more competent kicker than what you're bringing in house. And you talked about the rain. What's that going to also partially affect just naturally anyway? Some of those field goal attempts, and then factors in that much more if you have a backup in there. So could be a part of this game to keep an eye on.
Yeah, a couple guys in the chat on the way out are saying that Ward is hurt. He's got a hamstring injury. He alluded to that. He was actually asked, hey, you're not, playing at your normal high level. And he goes, well, I know the reason why. And I think a lot of people took that as like, oh, he's blaming coaching. Like he's not being used the right way. And I took it as, oh, he's hurt and he doesn't want to say. And they're like, well, why? And he's like, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm like,
So
I think he's
couple
hurt.
questions then with that. A couple questions. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
First, hamstrings don't heal playing on them. That's not
No, they don't. You're right. Very true. Yes.
And is he being driven to do that because he's basically like, I think you guys got like a voided year on his deal after this season. He's done. So there's a bit of a press now on his part that I got to go out there, put good tape so I can go get that next deal. If I'm sitting on the bench, I can't get that next deal. And the Niners don't have the money to pay me that deal.
I think that plays into it. I think the urgency of they're not winning, but they need him on the field plays into it. I think there's multiple factors there. I do, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
at least he's
I don't know that he's got a hamstring per se. I mean, but I do know that the last two preseasons, he has been out with some soft tissue injuries, including this one. So maybe that's crept back up on him. That's very possible. I don't know the exact injury because, to my knowledge, he hasn't talked about it. But it wouldn't surprise me if the hamstrings crept up on him again. So
it's the calves, the hamstrings, and the groins that are the three major ones that they have to let it get all the way to 100% on the meter of recovery in order to get on the field. And if you don't, there is that bit of a risk. But luckily for him, he's not going against a 6'4", 235-pound, 4'3" wide receiver this week. So he's got a bit of an easy day at the office this week. So he should be okay.
yeah, for sure. Dave says definitely Hawks more in Western Montana. Interesting.
I lived Whitefish for a few years, man. I was on the scene.
He follows up and says there's also Packers, Broncos, and Vikings fans there. Interesting. Okay.
That's east side of the state. That's east side.
East side. Okay. God's Gang says east side, west side. God's Gang says happy birthday, bro. Go Hawks. And we'll end it on that. Once again, happy birthday to Brandon. I would hate for your birthday have fallen on a Thursday, and especially if the 49ers had won that game. So I'm glad that your birthday is today and not then. I'll see you tonight on the roundtable, bro. Everybody in the chat on both sides, thank you so much for supporting. Link to Brandon's channels in my description. Make sure you go show him some love.
And a link to yours is in mine too, by the way. So link is also to Jesse's channel right now down in my video as well. So either side on us, go down the description link, show love both sides. That's what we do here. That's what your people I know do as well on this side of it. And please do that.
Yep. And tonight you can see us both on Roundtable Sports. If you just type in NFC West Roundtable, it's like the first thing that will pop up. It's a whole channel. We're going to be going tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific with the whole division. So come support your team. 49er fans, God knows I need it tonight. It's not going to be pretty for me. I think there's going to be some tomatoes thrown my way. So please come and support the San Francisco 49ers and come support me. And until tonight, we'll see you then. Much love. Thanks again, Brandon. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you having me on as always, Jesse.